Hey, Master Mark Kanaar here today with another of my Master's Message. And today I want to talk about one of my favorite movies of all time. And a lot of people may remember when they were training with me that I like to play the Rocky theme songs. And most of the music that I played was from off of a Rocky 4 soundtrack. And that happens to be one of my favorite movies of all time. Not my favorite. My favorite movie is Shawshank Redemption. But that's a whole different video, let me tell you. But when I was a kid, my parents were really strict with me about what movies I watch, and I remember not watching Rocky 4 until I was a little bit older. I started doing martial arts, and I watched the movie, and I was like blown away by it. I was like, whoa, this movie is like awesome. And what made Rocky awesome was things that I thought that everybody knew. But when I got older, I realized that people didn't see Rocky the same way I saw Rocky. And there was this tone of this guy fighting this big Russian guy, and it was like a mismatch, so to speak. But when you're a real fighter, or you really train, or you're a real coach, you realize like that's not ever going to really happen in real life, because Drago had like no professional fights at all, and Rocky had a bunch. And it doesn't really matter your size. Lots of times it matters your experience. And in real life, if that really would have happened, Rocky probably would have beat the brakes off of Ivan Drago, just like Floyd Mayweather beat Conor McGregor. It's kind of like that. Okay, even though the odds look like it was stacked. And then the other thing in the movie is they demonized another country, and I don't really see that as much anymore. I mean, it's still out there, but not to the extent, because people are trying to sell their movies worldwide or whatnot. But what was the undertone of the entire movie is very, very deep to me, and I see that a lot of people miss it. And it was one of the reasons why I played a lot of the Rocky musics, because I felt like that music in that movie really was motivational and could really change people's lives if they listened to the actual words and stuff like that. And what happens in Rocky, the way I view Rocky, my personal reflection of Rocky, is that he has a conversation with one of his best friends, his coaches, and it's this conversation of a fighter can't change. You can't change who you are. Once you're a fighter, you're always a fighter. And I feel like there's a certain degree of truth to that. There's certain things you learn as being a fighter that a lot of people will never experience. If you do jiu-jitsu, or you box, you do kickboxing, or you do almost any form of martial arts, there's a fear. There's this thing of adversity, like you're overcoming adversity, and you need that in life. And if you understand that as a fighter and you put that same mindset together, you could become successful in other areas of your life. And I truly believe that. So Apollo Creed has this mindset of like, hey, I'm a fighter. I'm always going to be a fighter. I need to be the top level prize fighter I always was. And he agrees to do this boxing match with Ivan Drago. And then what happens is, everybody knows, if you didn't watch Rocky 4, go back and watch it. If you already seen it, after you listen to this video, go back and watch it again. So then Apollo dies in the ring when he's boxing Ivan Drago. And you could tell that Rocky doesn't even know what to do about that. He even stopped himself from throwing in the towel, because he believed in what his coach said. Once you're a fighter, you can't change. All right? And when that happened, obviously he had the mindset. He still had the mindset of what his buddy Apollo Creed had. And he said, you know what? I'm going to go fight that guy. And he makes all these decisions. He doesn't really talk to his wife. And I remember the scene where he walks in his house and his wife's upstairs, and they got a nice mansion, and he's downstairs, and she's asking him like, hey, what did you do? And he says, well, I'm going to have to go away. I have to get my mind cleared, because I'm just going to focus on this guy, and I'm going to go to Moscow and all this stuff. And Adrian, his wife's like, hey, man, you got to change. And he gives her the line that Apollo gives him. I'm a fighter. I'm not going to change no matter what. And that's that. And then Adrian says something to him that's very deep to Rocky. She says, you can't win. And he lost his belief in his wife. And you could tell that really bothers him. But then he looks at her and says that in order for Ivan Drago to win, that he's going to have to let himself have the risk of dying in order to beat him, in so many words. Because he really believes in what Apollo told him. He really believes that he can't change. And he goes to Moscow, and he starts training. And then all of a sudden, something very, in my opinion, beautiful happens. His wife shows up, and she says something to him and says, I'm with you no matter what. She doesn't necessarily agree with what he's going to do, but she knows as a wife, the most important thing to do for a man is support him. And, if you watch the other Rocky movies, you can tell that Adrian is this lady who's really shy, But you can see when she's around Rocky, Rocky's this like tough, masculine guy, and his protection, the way she feels around him, makes her become a greater person than herself also. She comes out of her shyness when she's around him. And you can see it in the movies when he starts to win, how she doesn't care what anybody else thinks. She gets out there and kind of cheers for the guy she really loves. And then later on, after he gets done with his training, his coach Duke comes up, which was Apollo's coach, and gives him a speech about how he really believes in Rocky. Because up to that point, everybody really didn't believe in Rocky. But Duke believed in Rocky. And he told Rocky that he knows what he has to do to win. And he knows at the end, Rocky will be standing. And it's a pretty powerful message because he was Apollo's coach. So he knows how Apollo thinks. He knows how Rocky's thinking, that he's a fighter and nothing's going to change that. Nothing. And then the fight starts out and you see Adrian's like sitting there in the crowd and her head's down. She doesn't have very much confidence in Rocky because she doesn't really believe in him yet, but she's still there supporting him. And as the fight goes on, you could see that Drago's mindset starts to change, He's fighting a very seasoned fighter who's never going to give up. And as the fight goes on, you can see a scene where you realize what Drago's fighting for. Basically, everybody's cheering for Rocky now, and Drago says, I'm fighting not for you, I'm fighting for me. I'm fighting for me. But who is Rocky fighting for? He's fighting for the memory of his friends. His friend Apollo Creed that died. And it was a really big life lesson when I saw that, because I realized in life that people who are really selfish and they only think about themselves, those are the people that aren't attractive in life. Like, nobody wants to be around those people who are only in it for themselves. When you have a great coach, that coach really believes in you. That coach isn't a selfish coach. That coach wants you to do the best you can. And that's a huge lesson. And you see the fight go on, and as Rocky starts to win, you can see Adrian's entire demeanor changes. And she screams, "You're gonna do it." I'll never forget that. "You're gonna do it." And then Rocky wins. And then he gives a speech at the end. And the speech was about the U.S. and the USSR arguing with each other. And it was about change. And if you reflect back on the speech that he had with his wife, what his wife told him was true. That people can change. And it took a guy to get in a ring and fight another guy to be inspired by his drive and determination to look at another country differently. In his speech, he says, when I first came out here, I could feel how you didn't like me and I didn't like you none neither, and how it's better for us to change than 20 million people dying or something along those lines. And he basically says, if you can change and I can change, everybody can change. And when you reflect back, you have to realize that was the wisdom of Adrian. He finally believed in what his wife said, even though he had to go through this massive struggle in order to truly understand it. And the reason he did it was because he believed so much in his other coach's philosophy. And it was a very deep meaning to me, the idea of people being able to change. And that was why I always played the Rocky music when I was training people. Because when people came to my martial art class, it wasn't about them learning how to fight or just defending themselves. It was making them believe that they could change, that they could become a better person. And that's what I view Rocky for about people understanding that they can change. And that's why I love the movie so much. And that's the underlining. And I remember one of my students was driving with me one time, and I told him that, and he was really taken back by it. He's like, "Wow, I didn't see all that stuff in Rocky." Well, I did, because I'm that coach, and I want you to change. So right now we're on lockdown. You want to know something? Don't let that stop you in your goals. Write them down, get out there and train every day. I curled 300 reps last night, and I trained a little bit with my buddy Master Rocha stopped by, and we did forms or whatnot. I'm not gathering in a huge amount of people, but once in a while, one of my buddies will stop by, and we play real safe. We make sure that nothing bad's going to happen. We're not going out and about, and we're just kind of relaxing or whatnot. So I just want to make sure you guys understand how I see Rocky, and hopefully that helps you for today. I'll talk to you later. Bye.